What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be reviewing Daniel Jeremiah's Mock Draft 2.0. Normally, I would be continuing this, but I'm in the middle of a lot of exams and projects right now, so I appreciate you guys for allowing me to use the normal Mock the Mock build. I'm not usually a huge fan of doing these because, one, sometimes people just don't use logic, and you guys could see that earlier in the week, but two, I also think just scrolling through a web page is kind of cheap for you guys for me to make money off of. So I'd rather usually do something like continue the mock draft. However, we're going to stick to it for this time only because of time constraints. Usually, again, I would love to be able to continue this and be able to give you guys another round. So I promise you on DJ's 3.0, we'll be doing that. But without further ado, let's just jump into this. Feel free to support the community, like, comment, subscribe, YouTube stuff, you know what to do. So, yeah, Discord as well. Links are in the description. But Chicago Bears starting off with Jalen Carter. I don't know if he's using trades in this mock draft. So, it is what it is. Apparently, there's some more stuff in depth analysis on NFL Plus, which I do have, so we can check that out sometime. But that's probably going to be a Discord-only thing. Jalen Carter for number one for the Bears. If they're not going to be trading back, I think that's the best move. My opinion will be solidified or absolutely changed based on the combine. Last year, I was not a fan of how much of a fat ass Jordan Davis was, and Jalen Carter seems to be out of shape as well. So, I mean, at the combine, you got to see, even in the facial structure, you could see how much work Jordan put in the offseason. He looked thinner, and then he tested out like a freak. So, you could definitely tell he had the work ethic, and there was just something there at the Georgia training facility that they didn't do correctly when they were there. So I hope the same situations for Jalen Carter. If not, then there is legitimate concern, and maybe the Bears should go after someone like Will Anderson if they are not going to be trading out of that number one spot. But until the combine, I'm going to be solidified and hoping and being optimistic about Jalen Carter not being just a casual fat ass. So pick number 2, Bryce Young. I did a what I would do mock draft yesterday. You guys can check that out. I decided to go away from the quarterback route. The more I thought about it, I honestly would have probably taken Bryce Young again. It's up in the air between him and a defensive player. But, Bryce Young is a really damn good player. So I can't really complain. You guys get to see my board below my face. He is number 4 on my board. Big fan of him. This is the reason why I decided to ditch my mock draft with trades for the day, which we will be bringing back soon. Tyree Wilson at 3 is a bit high for me. I don't think Will Anderson Jr. is a guaranteed superstar, right? I'm not going to go that far. I think Tyree Wilson fits a role perfectly where J.J. Watt was. So I don't think it's a bad fit. I just think, again, I don't know if this mock has trades, but if the Arizona Cardinals traded back and got Tyree, I'd be on board for that. Yeah, it makes sense. But at number 3, man, that's really tough. It's not even like he's a true junior with that production. He's a redshirt senior who's 6'6", 275, long arms. He has a lot that you like, but there's a lot that needs to be tweaked. If JJ were still there, I would be much more open to this idea. I think Tyree has a lot to work on, but he has a very solid foundation. At number 3, I am not on the board with going after Tyree Wilson. Just not for me, and I think about that as well. Colts going Stroud. If he's there, I don't think that's a bad option at all. He needed to get a QB, and I think Steichen could use his legs a lot better than Ohio State did. Seahawks going Will Anderson. That is the best possible outcome. Myles Murphy. I do like Myles Murphy. He is my number 5 player. I think that the thought process that I used at the start of the year is no longer applicable. I had thought that he was going to take a big jump this year. I thought he was the best run defending edge I've ever studied, and he's up there for sure. He's going to be a very consistent player, and I think that's kind of what the Lions should be looking for. I don't think you need somebody to be like the best edge rusher in the NFL because you already have that high level production from Aiden Hutchinson, and you will continue to do so. Myles Murphy is a very, very good player, and I would not be mad at all if the Lions took him here at 6. I mean, that's why I have my board below my face. I don't really need to describe that much. Raiders going Will Levis. Again, I continue re-explaining this every single time. I don't think Will Levis is a fit because you look at the quarterbacks McDaniels has had success with. They're guys who are safe with the ball and just very good at distributing it. Will Levis is that guy who has that gunslinger mentality, that big pop to his arm, and I feel like that's kind of what Derek Carr was, and it didn't work. It didn't mesh. Is Will Levis better than Derek Carr? I don't know. It's based on the system he'll go to. That's, I mean, to be fair, most players, that's true of all evals. But I just don't think that Will Levis is going to mesh with Josh McDaniels very well. I personally would rather hone in on someone like Devon Witherspoon, Joey Porter Jr., or, I mean, I'm not really a huge fan of going offensive line at this pick, so I really do just like going DB at this point. You could go AR and just say, hey, you're going to outlast Josh McDaniels or something. I don't know. But for me, I am not on the Will Levis hype train for this team just because I do not think he meshes well. So it's kind of unfair to Will. It's also unfair to the Raiders fans to put him in a situation where he's kind of guaranteed to fail. And I could be wrong. I'm more than happy with being wrong. I love seeing players prove me wrong and be better than, what I expect. But anyways, Atlanta Falcons going Lucas Van Ness. I just think he's a one-trick pony. I really do. I just don't see like what most people do see in him. I have him like he raised up the board the last time I saw him, but it's not remotely close to this. Like I have him probably around my like 90 mark. Not I think I have him 10 times lower than what he is right here. And I could scroll down to get it, but I don't really want to do that like eyeball destruction on you guys below my face. But I would give this pick probably an F. I know Van Ness has a lot of potential, but this is a super deep edge class. If you're going to pick Van Ness at 8, that's pretty pricey, and especially when you can pick up one that I think is better. But even if you think Lucas Van Ness is a GOAT, like you can think that somebody in the second round, BJ Ojolari or Nolan Smith, these guys who also have very good production, very good skill sets, that value is a lot better than at pick number 8. So I am not a huge fan of this pick at all. Carolina Panthers, Peter Skoronski. Intriguing that they're going to go offensive line again. I'm not for this pick. You have Frank Reich there. I assume it's going to be offense as the primary pick because, again, that's why you brought Frank Reich on board. So at least you got that part right. But, if Anthony Richardson is here, we've seen Frank Reich work miracles with gunslingers. I mean, it is kind of, he and Dable are the gunslinger gurus. Maybe we'll call it that. Gunslinger gurus. So I'm not on board for this. I like Peter Skoronski. You see, he's number 6 on my board. That's why I put him below my face. And I'm all for building an offensive line. I just don't think it's the right use of the pick. I don't, especially when there's better options on the board, in my opinion. Pick number 10, the Eagles going Devon Witherspoon. I don't mind it. I don't think Devon is the best cornerback in the class. I have him at 25 on my board. He's still a top 4 or 5 DB for me in the class. Very good player nonetheless, but he's a good fit. I'm pretty sure the DB's coach is the DC or will be. So, you're not seeing a total system change in the coverages. So I do think he fits as well. Titans going Paris Johnson Jr., another spot where I'd be considering going after AR, but this is not a bad choice. Obviously, you guys chose an offensive tackle from Ohio State last year as well. So, it does make sense. You get that instant chemistry because they played together. But Houston Texans then going Jordan Addison. I don't know if D'Amico Ryans going to be going after 2 offensive players. That's just not what I think they will do, but I don't see it as a bad option at all. There is a potential chance that Brandon Cooks is no longer there, and then it makes a lot of sense. So, we're going to continue on here. The Jets going Broderick Jones. I'm fine with it. I think Broderick Jones is perfectly solid. Good tackle. He had some slip-ups, especially versus my former number 2 player in the class, Isaiah McGuire, who fell off a cliff because he just did not, you could just tell he didn't put in the work in the offseason. But Broderick Jones, very good player, very young as well, and it's for a huge need for the Jets. Patriots going Christian Gonzalez. I mean, I could totally see it, and I'm not that high on Christian Gonzalez. Michael Wilson kind of used him and just exposed him as somebody with a lot of flaws. But if I see Bill Belichick get his hands on Christian Gonzalez, I would not be surprised if he's a top 5 corner in the NFL. It's just Bill Belichick knows how to work miracles, and if he's able to do it with somebody, I believe, from ASU, then I'm pretty sure he can do it with Christian Gonzalez, who's a lot younger, a lot built. Pick number 15, Green Bay Packers going Dalton Kincaid. I just don't like Kincaid enough to take him in the first. And it's not that he's a bad player. It's like I just know in round 2, I'm going to be perfectly fine with all the tight ends that are there. So I'd much rather use this pick on a top tier defensive back, on a high upside run stuffing edge defender. And I think that's just better in my eyes, a better use of the pick. Obviously, wide receiver would be also in the mix. So I don't really see the value of going after a tight end because they usually are lower value. But, I do know a lot of people really like Dalton Kincaid. Joey Porter Jr. to the Commanders is a perfect fit. I love Joey Porter Jr. You guys see he's my number 2 player in the class. I'll scroll down so you guys get to see a little bit more of my board. I've been doing this for a while now. Darnell Wright, if he's there for the Steelers, you take him. You saw that. I think he could actually pull into guard because there are rumors of it. I personally wouldn't do that. I'd keep him as a tackle. He needs some work for sure, but he's had years at left and right tackle. Extremely agile for that size as well. And I think he put on weight. So the fact that he does have a lot of mobility at a very large size, to me, he's my offensive tackle 1 in the class. So I know I could be proven wrong, but I think that's something in 3 years we'll look back and be like, yeah, he was the best tackle in the class. Again, depending on where he goes. Pick number 18, Anthony Richardson to the Lions. If he's there at 18, I wouldn't hate it at all because I do think the upside is worth taking a swing on. But you also still have that DB. Just the DB slot is wide open for you guys that you guys need to address. And there's good value here as well. I don't know if Anthony Richardson's the best person to take at this point. I personally would be like, hey, I would be calling up Seattle, but I think Seattle Seattle went after an edge rush from Will Anderson. I would be calling up Seattle. I'd be calling up Minnesota. I'd be calling up Giants, being like, hey, Danny Dimes wants $40 million a year. Do you want somebody who's like $10 million a year and has a ton of upside, and you have Brian Dable? I'd be doing that in a heartbeat because then you can move back, still get someone like Emmanuel Forbes, and then you could be kicking some ass. But I don't think it's the worst pick in the world by any stretch because Anthony Richardson does have a ton of potential. And I trust Ben Johnson to potentially try to stay and mold the offense for a superstar potential quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Buccaneers and Bijan, they do need kind of a face of the franchise. It would not be a bad pick at all. A lot of DBs are up for contract. I would be considering that as well. Seahawks going Jackson Smith and Jigba. It sucks to see my boy D. Eskridge get absolutely benched essentially, but I don't think it's a heinous pick. It's a good player, and he does fit that role in between Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I don't think it would be a bad pick. Maybe not the best pick. I think offensive line is a pretty big position still to address. And you got guys like Osiris Torrance on the board. And Anton Harrison can kick into guard and then fill in at a tackle role if need be as well. So for me, I think that would be the best move, but this is not an awful pick at all. Chargers going Quentin Johnston. I have Quentin Johnston above Jackson Smith and Jigba by probably 20 to 30 spots on my big board, at least. I have no idea where I have. Jackson Smith and Jigba is at 41 on my board, and that's still a pretty damn solid position. Still worth reaching for in the first round, but Quentin Johnston is in my top 10. Very, very good wide receiver. So I love Quentin Johnston. If he's there for the Chargers, you take him instantly. Brian Branch for the Ravens scares the shit out of me because he's not trained as a boundary corner, but I can totally see him being an absolute freak as a boundary corner. And I feel like the Ravens could get that out of him with Marlon Humphrey being his mentor, also a former Bama DB. So, it is what it is, man. Brian Branch would be wherever he's going to go, I just pray to God they use him right because he can be an all-star. Minnesota Vikings going Deonte Banks. He's going to test out like a freak. He does have some really good traits. I think he's overrated, but not to the degree where I think these picks are necessarily bad. So I do like what Deonte Banks could bring. I think Dante Trader is the better and probably worth the first round pick defensive back from Maryland, but I love Maryland defensive backs. So I'm not going to absolutely destroy this pick, especially if you get to see Brian Flores get his hands on a prospect like this. Jaguars going Brian Breezy. I I'm not that high on him, but I think that the value is fine enough. He has high upside. I say that about a lot of these picks, but it's when I say a player is high upside, it's usually because I'm referencing that they do something really, really well that could translate, but there's also stuff they have a lot to work on. So their margin of improvement is huge. So we haven't seen the best of Brian Breezy. That's what I'm saying. He has pretty poor spatial awareness. He has pretty poor tackling as well. You can just look at the stats on that one. And this might not be the place where I see him succeeding in, but it is a potential spot where he could end up being taught by guys like Josh Allen and Travon Walker, who, I mean, Travon Walker's played with some pretty damn good defensive interior guys anyway. Would be pretty cool to see him. Brian Breezy basically become the new Jalen Carter, but I say the chances of that are slim. Giants going Jalen Hyatt. I don't blame the Giants for ever going a wide receiver in round 1, so I'm not going to crap on the pick. Dallas Cowboys then going Keon White. I hope he doesn't go in the first. I didn't think he was even that spectacular at the Senior Bowl. He's a really solid player who moves well for his size, but, I still have him pretty high. I got to see where I have him on my board because he's not bad by any stretch. Now I'm just tripping balls and I have no idea where the hell I put him, but he's somewhere in this range. Keon White's a good player, just not worth a first round pick. And I think with like guys like Emmanuel Forbes on the board who are putting on 15 to 20 pounds of muscle, who will probably still test out at a very similar range as what he was when he was lighter, I'd much rather be looking at that or Osiris Torrance or guys like that. Bills going Osiris Torrance, speaking of, not a bad move at all. I think boosting the offensive line is always a good idea. Bengals, if I see DeJuan Jones on the board, I'm going to take my chances with him and either develop him or just plug him immediately over, again, a tight end class where you could probably look at somebody in the second, especially if you let Michael Mayer slip a little bit. So you kind of just push the tight ends down one. I'd rather get a potential guy to protect Joe Burrow rather than giving Joe Burrow an option at a lower value position. Again, that's just me, though. Pick number 29, New Orleans going Zay Flowers. I love Zay. I do see a little bit, like I say, his range is heavy weighted on Steven Sims, who I love Steven Sims. I'm a big fan of him. And up to potentially very, very small amount, but you could say shades of Antonio Brown. He was the entire offense there. My wide receiver 4 starting out the year. He's the reason I didn't like Andrew Booth because he made Andrew Booth look like a clown. And I fully love what Zay Flowers can bring. Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Nice to see him get some representation here for the Eagles. I'm going to quickly check what the Eagles did at their number 10 pick because it's slipping my mind. But Devon Witherspoon and Felix, both really good players. I have Felix actually right there at number 10 on my board. He's just like a guy who's very well balanced, and he improved himself over the year, and especially over the years. He looked kind of unathletic last year. He boosted his athleticism this year. I think he's totally worth taking in the first, and I would not be surprised if he ends up being an Eagle, kind of a lesser named guy who ends up going to Philadelphia as an edge rusher. I could see him being there for probably 15 years of his career. Then the Chiefs going Nolan Smith, totally away from the Spag track. Spag likes to go after big-ass dudes who are 265 plus. If they end up doing this pick, would I hate it? Absolutely not. I like Nolan Smith a lot. He's actually number 24 on my board. Dude's been rising up. I think his athleticism is incredible, and he was actually a really pretty poor run defender in terms of the eye test, a year and a half ago. The way he improved his game is admirable, and I was someone who was like, hey, I don't have Nolan Smith in my top 100. I watched him this year, and I was like, this man looks completely different in the run game. It sucks that he got that pectoral tear, but I do think that's just a product of how strong he is, and he just likes to use 100%. Motor is no question with this guy. I think he belongs in the first round. I think the Eagles would be a pretty cool spot for him to go to, but I just don't see it being realistic to the Chiefs. However, I would still fully support it if it ends up being that way. So that is going to be the video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.